Okay, well, we will get started officially. Hello, my name is Lauren Cobbs. I am the founder of SD Melanin and Create Agency, the two hosts of this organization, or of not of this organization, of this discussion for this evening. And we are here because of San Diego Design Week. Shout out to San Diego Design Week, everyone who's been a participant, who's helped out, presented, and thank you to all of the organizers for San Diego Design Week. Thank you for creating this platform. What we want to talk about today is access and equality and equity within the industries of events and entertainment. And so to get us started, we're gonna ask the audience another question. And you can, in your response, feel free to type out what you feel or your response in the chat box again. So think of a time when you walked into a space where you instantly didn't feel like you belonged. Think of what triggered this feeling and how you left feeling that evening. I can think of a time like that and I didn't feel good. And so I'm assuming a lot of other people didn't feel good. Now, let's juxtapose that to a time when you walked into an event or an experience and you felt immediately welcomed. Right off the bat, you were like, this space and this entire experience was designed with me in mind. It was like, I feel like this is my people, this is my vibe, and this is my tribe. Now, which one of those do you want, right? One or two, scenario one or two. You can just type one or two in the chat box. I want, yeah. Right? Okay. That was a feeder question. Everyone should be answering too. So the point of tonight's discussion is to discuss instances and experiences from the producer or the curator's perspective of how we try to enter spaces and contracts or build opportunities so our audience can feel like number two, like they feel welcome, they feel like they want to be here, and they leave feeling fulfilled. But there are obstacles and challenges that we face as a direct result to how we present to the world and to racism and inequity. And so we're going to use this time to talk about some of those challenges, but also the ways in which we are fortified within our own community to keep going despite those challenges, to overcome those obstacles, and then how we can build more spaces and more ecosystems with people who look like us, for opportunities that are built for audiences who look like us, without having to go through gatekeepers who maybe don't want us to exist in the world. So I am gonna introduce our amazing array of speakers here tonight. This isn't a panel, this is a discussion. We're just gonna chat amongst friends. So it's not a panel, but we're gonna start off with Erwin. Erwin is the boss, a boss. He's an award-winning creative director and designer who has built brand platform for companies like your faves, Google, Beats by Dre. Erwin has an amazing portfolio, but not only is he designing for the best, he's also creating the best for diverse audiences like us. He is a co-founder of a number of different brands and companies that center diverse voices and perspectives, such as Open Gym, San Diego, and Experience Crafted. So thank you for being in here, Erwin. So happy to have you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Awesome. All right, we're gonna head to Mr. Ramel Wallace. Ramel, I'm gonna keep saying the same adjectives because they're all true for everyone on this panel. Another boss, another amazing innovator. Ramel is born and bred in San Diego. He is a hip hop specialist, CEO of the Holyfield, which is a creative agency committed to a community of artists and educators. He's also an artist, amazing artist. He's on the board of the San Diego African American Museum of Fine Arts, and he's a community and marketing manager at BAM, the agency. So thank you for being here, Ramel.
It is my pleasure to be here. Fighting on and off, just let me know. I'm trying to work on it. Mm-hmm. Just know I cared about the lighting.
Yeah. And last but certainly not least, we have Miss Jessie Medina. She is a phenomenal leader and inspires me all the time. She's a social entrepreneur and founder of the FemX platform, which, I mean, talk about creating community. Like, FemX has done that across so many different platforms and perspectives. She is driven to create spaces and resources for women to thrive, creating inclusive events. And the FemX portfolio includes a feminine co-working and event space, an annual summit, podcast, and so much more. So thank you for being here, Jessie. Awesome. All right, so we're gonna get started with this conversation. If you have questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A box. We'll get to them, but really, I just wanna start off by asking the panelists, let's just kick off this discussion with tell me about a time in which you faced an inequitable challenge that was directly related to how you presented, how you showed up in the world as a Latina woman, as a Black man. Like, anyone can go ahead, kick it off.
I guess I'll jump in there. I want to say the first time I've experienced something along those lines is when I started to go to like a white school. I started to go to a white school in middle school. And I would always say mines, like that's mines. And people would always say, what are you talking about? It's mine. And so people kind of pointing out the way that I use language. And my family's from Pensacola, Florida. Like we're 4 generations down from it, but there's still these like certain ways that we speak and how you speak. People really download that and they give a judgment on your character according to how you speak. They'll put a judgment on your intelligence, on your capabilities, and it's just based off of how someone is speaking. And I always thought that was extremely interesting. I was watching this video where a woman was talking about the school system and how you shouldn't go fixing people's language. You should open up your ears to be respectable to that language, because you have a lot of Black people that are not coming to, they were stolen, and they're in America and they're creating a language. The language that we speak is a language, but it's something that's not recognized. So there's no type of programs in schools like a ELS, I hope I'm saying that right, that can be developed. There's no programs for little Black kids. They're just told, you talk in slang. Don't say it like that. They're being corrected in this dismissive way, which has a trickle down effect on, your character and what you think of yourself and your culture and how you speak. So that was one of the first ways that I really experienced it through the language that I choose to have.
Yeah, I would actually second that. As a Black man growing up in America, you experience it at a very, very early age, right? It's kind of, you just always live with it. And for me, I actually grew up in the suburbs. And so I experienced it from both sides, where I didn't necessarily all the way fit in with the people who looked exactly like me. But then the school I went in, because it was a predominantly white school. So there was always this tension of, where do I belong? Where do I fit in? And how do I actually feel at home? And so to like what you were actually bringing up, like what are the spaces I actually felt at home, or really just with my family, because they were the ones who understood the nuance of my character and who I am, and didn't try and narrow me down to because you look like this. And I found that that happens on both sides. And then even being somebody who grew up with it and just took it as like a normality, I think through like everything that's been happening since George Floyd, it's forced me to really think through how I experienced racism. And I think over time, for me, it was actually more internalized than it was external. And so it was me considering how people would view me in a more critical way than they probably even viewed me. So every time I would step into a room as a creative director, when I'm going into a room with the Google team, et cetera, I would always have that in my head. And I would always be hypercritical of like how I was speaking, how I was talking, what's the language that I'm using? Is everything proper? Because right now I'm a representative for all Black people, apparently, to these individuals. Or when I was in a store, I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna spend more money so they don't think that I don't have the money, which then is also me demeaning my own culture to say like, is my culture only represented in this negative light, and me also feeding into it. So there's just been like all of these things where I realized for me, it's been a lot of internalized racism that I applied to myself that then limited me before in my like self-expression and my pursuit of like what this is about, which is like creating spaces.
Yeah, I would say for me too, I'm sure we can all tell so many stories. I would say the first time that I saw it clearly was, I'm an immigrant. I actually came to the US, after I turned 15. So half of my life, I was in Argentina, half of my life here pretty much. And I just told you my age. But for me, it was like when I tried to go to college, once I graduated high school, I mean, I saw a few things before that, but when I tried to go to college, I realized that I was a dreamer, what is called a dreamer for Latinos, and that I couldn't qualify for scholarships. I had straight A's. I was a great student. I was really ambitious. And now I find out like you have to figure it out to go to college. You can't get scholarships. You can't qualify for financial aid. And that's the first time where I felt, I think, angry, where I felt like this is not fair. Like I worked so hard my entire life, and why like a stupid piece of paper, something has to determine, or where I'm from or whatever has to determine my future. And I had to work really hard. I had to work 3 jobs. I had really good jobs that led me to where I am today because I got really cool gigs and I got to start running side hustles and whatnot. But at the same time, I also had to have the crappy restaurant jobs where I experienced sexual harassment or weird things, and I wouldn't get out because it was the only job I could get. And so for me, experiencing that and having to work hard, kind of like what Erwin was saying, working hard and feeling like you have to do more to prove yourself. And then hearing the news and hearing people's comments like Latinos are lazy, when like I'm working 3 jobs and getting straight A's in college, or hearing things like, Latinos don't work or take our jobs, where like every single person that I know that's Hispanic, our parents work so hard, especially immigrants. They work so hard. So we're seeing this reality, which I'm sure you can relate to. We're seeing one reality, and then we have to step out in other places that don't know, that don't have those perspectives. And we have to almost like prove ourselves or try to show like who we are, and that we are human, that we are just like you, that that I'm showing up here to work, to show my art or whatever it may be, but being judged or treated differently because of, I'm Latina. And then add to that being a woman too, there are other disadvantages, but like I said, I have so many stories. I'll keep it to that one for now.
That's I think I echo what everyone has said in the terms of it starts earlier than you think. Like you don't walk into corporate America or even a college campus like, oh wow, like what's this about? No, it absolutely starts as a kid. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about just the propaganda and the misinformation that is deliberately spread about Black people, about Latinos, about immigrants, about anyone that can be otherized, right? And you learn it without you realizing you're learning it. It kind of just seeps in, and you internalize it, like what you said, Erwin. You internalize it in such a weird, in such a, I think it's weird because you internalize hateful, in some ways, very hateful thoughts about your community, and you're like, but wait, I know that's not to be. I know that's not true. And it takes, at least for me, it took a very active approach of unlearning that still goes on today. And it was, and as I fell into this space of creating space for others, it reminded me how important it was for me to unlearn. If I were to create a loving and nurturing environment for specifically Black and Brown people, because I now have to be on the lookout for like watch phrases or behaviors or attitudes that you see on the back end, like before you even get to like before your guests arrive, you're listening to conversations and security requirements. That's like my favorite. When you think about, that's like, for me, that's my favorite. Oh, let's see what's gonna happen. So when you start talking about the security requirements, and the posture of people of like, well, we don't need any trouble, or like, we don't play that music. And that's actually how I got into this world. It's going to a very popular, what is this super PB brunch spot. And I was new, so I didn't know, like, don't go to PB for certain things as a Black human. But I went to PB, and it was Sunday, and it was tons of people there, and I was like, yay, like, this is a vibe, great. And then we asked them to play like some like very commercial artist at this point, like, I don't know, it could have been Migos or someone. And they're like, yeah, we don't play hip hop on certain days, like today. And I was just like, what? Like, you can't play Drake? Like, come on. It's the kid from Degrassi, like Drake. And they were like, no, but we can play like Beyonce maybe. And I was like, all right, well.
Maybe?
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's like, I think there are so many that reminded me how important it was to unlearn my harmful, like, internal ideals, because now I was responsible for like really pushing back and creating something in a way that would not allow my guests to feel that.
Yeah, that actually like goes into something that I've been talking a lot about, or having conversations a lot about recently, which is the role and importance of space within our society. And it's paired with a statement that I heard actually at like an event Ramel invited me to at the museum. I forgot who said it, but she was basically talking about, you can't write your own future past, because essentially everything in media is not the reality of your full history and your full story, which who you should be, who's not you, right? So a lot of the media that we consume, like you're saying, is actually created by people and the nuances of any POC, and they're just creating from their like narrow perspective of it. And then if we as individuals, whatever background we're from, don't understand our heritage and our history, then we are now subject to just chasing the dreams, which continue to narrow us down. Like, how many people wanted to be basketball players after Jordan became like a market? It spiked, most likely. And then as I begin to think about like the role, I studied urban planning my first year, architecture. I wanted to be urban planning. And there's this whole like notion of spatial identity and urban identity, and beginning to look at space as not just a thing where life happens on top of, but really understanding that space informs your current identity and your future identity, because it allows you to tell yourself who you are and who you will be. So the fact that we can now shape those spaces with that understanding is like of the utmost importance. And like your statement just like brought that full circle for me. It's like, we've had these other experiences where you step in and they say we can't play this music because X, Y, and Z. You can internalize that and go like, okay, that makes sense. Like it might be too like urban, or it might be too hood for them or whatever. And that can like over time begin to shape your own identity with your race, with your people, with your background. And so it becomes super important that we understand those nuances so we can actually tell those holistic stories and use space as not just gathering, but as moments for actual like storytelling. I forget who said that, Ramel. Someone at that event.
I forget who said it. I really do.
Man.
But it was a beautiful statement. Another quote from that that night was that they had never heard the truth in a history book.
Facts.
That always stayed with me. Because like we're saying, you learn these things from your youth and you're baptized in them. And so you spend a lot of time unlearning these things. And at a certain point, I had to stop listening to myself. I had to. And then when you think of communication in general, 90% of it is nonverbal. So I love my words. I grew up hip hop. Like I love the words, but you can see what someone's saying even without the words, even without them saying, we're not gonna play Drake. He was already communicating that probably from across the room in these weird ways where a lot of times the things that people don't say says so much about them. So like redesigning the way that I listen to the room with more than just the words, and redesigning the way that I listen to myself where it's more than just the words, because I'm not gonna put it as eloquent as Erwin, but I like to call it orange juice is yellow. I don't care I don't care who tell me that orange juice is orange. Look at orange juice. It's yellow. You can tell me that it's orange, but I'm looking and I'm observing from my own perspective. It's yellow. I don't care what you say. Orange juice is yellow.
That, that's so real. And Erwin, to your point about creating space, one of the things I'm super passionate about is like physically the space, like designing, even if I'm just coming in for a one-day pop-up, like I want to design and move the furniture, bring in decor, do something to design the space, because that matters a lot. And I think what I also run into now that I'm always observing, no matter where I go now, like, oh, how are they doing this? How are they doing that? I think one of the challenges that comes up a lot is getting access to a space. If throughout my time as an event curator and producer, the only times I've ever wanted to stop have all been directly correlated to outstanding obstacles to getting access to a space or a venue, or once we're let in, managing the staffs within that venue's like behavior to how we're utilizing the space. And again, like it's not like anyone's like throwing tables. It's not anyone like that. It's just like the way in which we utilize this space seems to offend in some way more than other people who utilize the space in the exact same way. So and in the last 6 weeks where I have spent like hours and hours, like I literally got sick this weekend because I dedicated so much time and energy to getting access to a space so that I can then build that space up for this audience that I know, like, Black and brown professionals, especially Black professionals or Black people in San Diego, are just so underserved within this so underserved, point blank and period, right? That's end of a sentence. But so underserved, especially when you dive into this industry. And I'm like, if we are not creating it, if people like us are not creating the space, it is literally just not going to happen. And not only is it not going to happen, if we walk into a space that obviously wasn't created for us, chances are we won't even feel welcome. Like, it's very likely that we're going to feel like, I'm going to just take my ass home. Like, I'm going to just go home, because this is not even a space that feels right. Like, I should be here. And so that, like, I would love to hear your thoughts on barriers that you encountered trying to just get access, and then how you overcame them. Because I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still 6 weeks into trying to find an empty parking lot in San Diego County that I will pay you just so I can park some cars here, and getting no's. Well, that music is so active. I literally had a venue tell me, well, the R&B, literally rhythm and blues music that you want to play is so active. The security, you're going to need a lot of security. And you know what? Actually, we just can't do it. A venue told me the next available spot they had from a Monday to Sunday was in January 2021. And this is in COVID 2020. So yeah, tell me, how are you guys?
Lauren, I gotta say, first of all, you can always come to my space, always open. But I do wanna add to that, because even before I created Femme Exporters, I literally created it because I felt that way. Because I felt like I was doing events for women, empowerment events, and it was so hard to find a venue, a space. That was always the biggest hurdle for us. And then when you find it, it's like they want you to pay like you're throwing a wedding. I was like, I wouldn't even spend that much on my wedding, you know. And so for me, it was I was going to a co-working space for my business, and I was always trying to find a venue. And at one point, I was like, and I wanted to make friends because I was new to San Diego. So I was like, you know what? One day it just clicked. I kept saying, like, I want a place like this and like that and like that. And one day I was just like, I'm just gonna create it. I'm just gonna build it. I'm gonna build that table. You know, and it something that I always tell people of color is build a table if you can't find it. And if you have a table, right? If you have that boardroom and that table, invite other people. You know, something that I learned from my mom and my grandma growing up is that we could always fit so many guests, right? We had a tiny house, we had a tiny table. There was always food. We were broke, but we never ran out of food. We could always invite the entire neighborhood. And I think that's something that runs with us in our culture. And you know, I always say to people, like, invite people to the table, you know, get other people to come, create those spaces that are welcoming. And I think something that's really important is to also support those places that are like that, right? To also show up for those people, show up for those spaces. And so, like I said, you know, you're welcome. I don't know if you need a parking lot. I don't have a huge parking lot, but you're welcome to do it here. I have a big space. And this is why it was created. It was created because I wanted a space like that. And one of the things that I'm really proud of, not because it's trendy now, but I'm really proud that, you know, it's always been that way, that you can always walk in here and see all kinds of people, all, you know, all types of colors, all different styles. And that's what it's about. It's building those spaces, building those tables, and don't be afraid that if there's someone listening that is not out there, don't be afraid to be the one that builds that table. And when I was starting out, I had a lot of challenges because, you know, there were people told me, oh, you don't have real estate background, like you don't own buildings, you don't have all the money in the bank, like I didn't qualify for anything. You're a woman, you're this, you're that. I heard all the no's. Everyone said no, I couldn't do it, and I made it happen. And you know, it was harder maybe, but I made it happen because I knows that I would, oh, let me show you, and I did it, you know. And maybe it took me a little more, and I had to do a lot of things myself. really proud of that space because it's different shades of skin tones. Like people don't know that. I painted it myself, and that was my way to say like, hey, everyone's welcome here. So, so everyone's welcome here, and just build that.
I love that. I love that. We have a few questions from the audience, and I think they're really interesting. What makes a space or event feel comfortable walking in? Like,
I mean, to me, the most important thing is safety. You have to feel safe, whether that's emotionally safe or psychologically safe, physically safe. You want to feel safe in those type of environments when you're going out to have a good time, especially. That's the utmost thing to me. I want to feel safe, and there's a few things that can make me feel unsafe. You're alluding to them, like feeling like a complete outsider. I like to straddle the fence a little bit. I put 1.5 on the one that you said. I feel like complete polar opposites end up being very similar in some type of way. When you're talking about man and woman, or like the balance between yin and yang, that are just off a little bit. They were just maybe not taught the right thing. And it leads to people feeling unsafe and being unsafe. And it leads to other people being violent. And so for myself, I think safety is the utmost important thing.
yeah, I agree. I think about how I feel, right? And I think that's correlated to your emotional safety. Like when I walk into a space, I want to feel like I am seen and that person is happy to see me. Because what else are you doing? Like, what like when I walk into a space, I want someone to feel, I want to feel like, Lauren, where you been? We are so happy you came back. Like, even if that's the first time I've been there, I want to feel as if like I am being welcomed back. And that's something that we work really hard with our staff. And it comes, I guess not working hard, like it comes easy, like, because it feels, in the events that SD Melanin produces, it feels like family. Because that's how we want it to feel. We want people to feel like cousin. And so I think what makes a space feel comfortable is the people that are there looking at you and being like, I see you, I'm happy you're here, welcome. And that not being, and that's not the last time you feel that throughout that event, but that's consistent. Everybody that's there is like, you're here, you are supposed to be here. Not, oh, hi. Or you can only sit for 90 minutes. Like, we have limitations here. Like, I want to feel like I'm supposed to be there. And then we can talk about after that, after I feel as if like, okay, this is the right spot, then throughout that space, there are elements that reinforce that. So, and I think a lot of times it depends on where you are, but I don't know of any place in America that's completely homogenous with just white people. Like, there's no place that there's only just white people. So if I'm in a space, especially in a major city like a San Diego, and everyone in this space, everyone that is employed in a meaningful way, like, employment is meaningful always, but if the people in the front of the house, the managers, if everyone is white and the only people of color I see in there are the people who's working in the back in the kitchen and the dishwashing section, then I have questions like, you cannot find qualified members of your team that just don't look like you? And then I look at your marketing and I see, okay, who's on your walls? Who's in your menu? Or who's does everyone also look the same there? And then I'm like, huh. And that's why I'm always thinking about how these spaces are designed intentionally. You hire architects to create how people flow. You hire marketing and design teams to create how people feel when they're there. Who is reflected in that space? And when I look and I see that everyone looks the same, then I know this space was not created for me. I may be allowed to be here, maybe, but this space was not created with me in mind at all. And that's where we need to stop. Like, that's a problem.
Yeah, and
Yes.
to add to that, I would say, sorry, I would
no,
say
I didn't.
too,
I
like,
didn't. Yeah.
okay, yeah, I've noticed like a lot of people now, because obviously we're having these conversations, and I'm glad that we're having these conversations, are saying, okay, yeah, I'll invite that person to my Zoom call, you know, an influencer, I'll post about this Black person or something. But I also feel like a lot of people are doing it because, and I think when, right, I think when you are throwing an event, when you are putting together a panel, like I thank you for adding me to this, for including me in this, you know, because I think people there, and not just to talk. I think a lot of people have been putting people now in their spotlight to talk about, like, oh, you're Latina, talk about being Latina. You're Black, talk about being Black. And that's great. I like this panel is for that. That's awesome. However, invite them to talk about marketing. You know, invite them to be on your panel to show how good of a director they are. You know, invite them to showcase their new project, or to sing that song, or to perform. Like, why can we only add those people as a token, or as to meet a quota, right? Like, oh yeah, out of 10 employees, we have 2 minority people, or we have 2 people of color. Like, no, why aren't those people, to add to what you were saying, why aren't they in your boardroom? Why aren't they on a position of power? Why aren't they making decisions? Why aren't they telling us and guiding our business decisions and seeing how we can better serve that community? And on that same note, why can we, if we want to support and be allies to these communities, put someone, you know, if I want to support the Latino community, I'm going to put a Latina to talk about that. I'm not going to have, you know, someone that's not Latina talking about that, because they don't understand, right? So I've been seeing a lot of that, and a lot of people sharing, which is good. I think it's progress, but also let's really start highlighting these people, right? Really being inclusive, really, that it really shows throughout the fabric of our business, and in the way that we make decisions, and how can we serve this community? What can I add here that someone will feel represented in my business, in my community? And I think that's something that's really important. And I invite anybody that's a business owner to really think about these things. How can I really put the spotlight on these communities and really empower, or, you know, offer a resource for them? So I think that's something really important that we all have to check ourselves on. You know, I have to check myself all the time, you know, because I'm not everybody, and I don't understand all the other communities, you know. So I have to bring in people that understand that community. I love hearing from you, so I can understand your perspective about your community. So I think that's really important.
That's so real. And so one thing I want to talk about is, because I want to talk about how we can move from a space in which we are looking for permission, or we're being allowed in, to a space of where this is our space, this is our ecosystem. We control the inputs and the outputs, and how you look doesn't play a factor in what we can do. Like, how you look doesn't play a factor in if you can progress or not. And so I know, Jesse, you have your own space. You said ownership, like, we're not doing that. Erwin, I know you are working on some dope things. Now, Ramel, you are the CEO of your own agency. You've had spaces and venues. You all have been, and currently are, integral in building the ecosystem. So I would love to talk about that. And I'm gonna call out Erwin, because I'm gonna call you out this time, Erwin. I'm gonna call you out.
Dang. I was actually just going to just reiterate what Jesse said. Just the fact that if you build it, the people that need it will come. And we just need to honestly support those people who are building it. I think that is of the utmost importance. Like you're building something. We need to support. So it's not only about the building that takes place. Like a bunch of Black people build stuff, but a bunch of Black people don't support it. It's not until like BLM, like that's when people of color started supporting people of color. And so even with so my grandma's Filipino. And so some of my side projects are actually with, or Open Gym is like a group of Filipino friends, and our restaurants and spaces are, for me, that's an opportunity to explore that side of my heritage and that side of my story, which again is important to understand your whole history and your whole story. But we're intentionally creating those spaces, and now we need the individuals to support those spaces so that those spaces can then thrive. And when those spaces thrive, we as a community thrive. And when we have those spaces, you can inspire other people to now go and create those spaces. And again, so to me, it's more about the need for support, not just like, hey, I'm a gung-ho person, so I'm just gonna create stuff. But honestly, the support and supporting POC and supporting businesses that are really contributing back to the communities that look like you are of the utmost importance. And to vote with your dollar and your time is of the utmost importance. And so yes, on top of building the table, making sure that those individuals and making sure that you as a person, if you want these spaces, go and support the groups that are creating these spaces, for sure.
I guess I'll jump in there too. I always like to mention hip hop because even internally, I get a feeling like when I mention hip hop in business realms, like it's not supposed to be there. Mm-hmm. I like to mention things that's not supposed to be there because if we're in a society that was built and designed against us, if something's not supposed to be there, it's supposed to be there. Mm. And without something like hip hop, I would have never found out about investors. I never would have had any clue. I'm looking at rappers and I'm like, oh wow, how are they so successful? I have a friend say, oh, he has an investor. And I start to do the work myself. And you have someone like Reverend Jesse Jackson. He said access to capital is the fourth stage of the civil rights movement. So learning these new things, it's gonna be something new. It's gonna feel a little bit uncomfortable because we've been designed to digest things that kill us. So life is so different. When we get life, it's abnormal. And so adjusting how we move in that accordance, it's gonna feel like it's not supposed to be there. That's how we know we're supposed to be there. And everybody else, we need to let the door open and then Robin Hood that access to all the people that we know deserve
it. Yeah, that's so real. That's so real. I think, yeah, I 100% agree in the terms of supporting what's in the ecosystem today so you can build up. And I'll be the first to say that I can do better at that. And not I can, but I will do better at that, right? I'll do better at intentionally supporting what's already in the ecosystem. Because I think sometimes it can feel inconvenient. It can feel as if like, oh, well, this is next door and you have to go, but that's down the block. And you're like, okay, girl, like it's just a block. Like go down the block. And the other thing that I've been thinking a lot about is the way in which we are intentionally given less resources to succeed. less resources to show up, like like the guy next door who got a $10,000 gift from this grandpa to start up his like skateboard shop, and you're like, man, this is a clean skateboard shop, like everything's so clean, pristine. Yeah, because he had $10,000 to hire a marketing team, interior designer, all of these resources get done. And then your man's down the street, he had to literally work 3 jobs to open up his skateboard shop, and he's still working a 3rd job to keep it running, but it doesn't look as clean without the huge marketing agency behind it. And so we think, oh, well, this should be better. Oh, this should look like that. And I've been thinking about the way in which we can be critical within ourselves about what it should be without understanding where it is today is a miracle based on what resources they had to find and use to get it done. And how we're like, we're like, oh, we just want this to be just as good. I hear a lot of people in our community talking about, well, like, why can't we just be just as good? Well, let's talk about centuries of oppression. Like, let's not stop with slavery. Let's not stop with immigration policies that made no sense. Let's not stop with just resources that just weren't there. Let's talk about how in very real days, it's hard to get a loan as a business person of color. It's very hard to get, if you get a loan, what those interest rates look like and how inequitable those are. Let's talk about the other ways in which we have to work so much harder just to show up. And within our community, we can still be critical, or other people outside of our community, can be critical of that. When we're like, man, we are literally here, and and we are a rock star for being here. Like, y'all are rock stars. I want y'all to know that you are literally rock stars. Legit fucking rock stars. Sorry, SDW.
Thanks to ancestors. I can't believe we made it.
Yeah.
Do this. It's crazy. It really is.
Well,
Gosh, literally touched me so much because it's so true. And I remember when I was trying to start this, I had, like I said, I had a lot of no's, and yet, you know, I know all these statistics. Like, did you know that Latinx women, not men, but specifically women, we are the fastest growing group of people starting businesses. So here we are building all these businesses. This is like real facts. And then there's the fact that we're the least funded group. How are we doing it? That doesn't make sense. We are bootstrapping, you know, we're working extra hard, and I mean, a lot of people of color are, and I have had those people that walk in here and they're like, well, I just went to WeWork and, you know, they have this or something, you know, and then I'm like, yeah. Like, honestly, I don't want those people in my space. You know, it's like, well, yeah, WeWork, yeah, they have billions of dollars. And you know, this is why it's so important, going back to what Erwin said, you know, let's support, right? Like, we all understand what it's like. We all understand the extra work. So let's support one another, right? Let's show up for one another, because like you said, we are working extra hard, and we are, you know, we're all trying to build those spaces for this community, for the community. And so, but yeah, I couldn't relate more when you were saying that, Lauren. I was just like, yep. So I hear that. And also, I think being mindful for people, you know, if you've ever said a comment like that to someone, just before you do that, ask the story. How did you build this? How, you know, I wish we would get to share these stories more. Like, this is what it took, right? This is all the length to what I had to go through to build this. And when the more we get to share these stories, the more that people start caring, and then they start seeing the value in it. So yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you, Lauren.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think about all those inequities that happen, whether you talk about redlining, where you talk about people getting kicked out of agriculture, whether you talk about the distributions in the tech industry. It's really a lot of things that have held people back. And the odd thing is that it ends up making people stronger. And I just wish that more people would study, say, like social justice theories or a lot of Black queer women that have a lot of answers, just women in general. Because the more marginalized someone is, and we're talking about the power of difference, that means they've been holding space for everybody in the world out of survival. So they know what everybody else is thinking already, because they've had to know so that they could survive. So they have these universal answers, that they have universal problem solvers, that they know the pain points, because they've had to hold that space for everybody else except for themselves their entire lives. So it's way more valuable. Like, we're talking about human instincts, progression. I love progression. It doesn't make sense to just bring in someone else that looks exactly like you, especially in the white male world. It makes so much more sense to bring in someone that's different, or to bring in more people that are different, because that's going to diversify your thoughts. It's going to diversify the thought process. When everybody has the same thought, the progression doesn't happen. It's always those mutations that allow people to leap to that next step of evolution. You have to allow that space for the miracle to happen. People want miracles every day, so the miracle can't happen. You have to allow that space for that to come true.
That's so true. Well, I know we only have a few minutes left. So in closing, I'd love to hear what is one thing. Initially I was going to ask, like, oh, so if someone was like looking to enter in this space, or want to start a venue or begin curating and producing events or experiences, what would you tell them? And you can still answer that, or you can say, like, what would you say to, what are your last final words? Whatever you want to answer, whatever you want to say. 'Cause we've talked about a lot.
Final words, right?
I had Ramel on a podcast, and he dropped some like fire final words. I'm like scared to follow him.
No, I don't have no fire. I'll go first. I'll go first. Final words. I did this photo shoot with this guy named Rich. He's trying to take photos of Black people and ask what it's like to be Black. So I told him, I said, this shit is tight. Tight. This is like, being you, like being yourself, is so amazing. Like, don't forget it. No matter what someone tells you, they're gonna keep telling you that orange juice is the wrong color. You need to look at them and say, I'm amazing. I don't care what you say. I know that we're amazing. And just take it. Just go with it. Believe in yourself.
Yeah, I'll second that. As POC, people of color, we have so much flavor, so much sauce, so much like richness, so much depth, so much texture. And there's a ridiculous spectrum. And so there's so many like nuances and stories that need to be told. And so just saying the same thing, just tell your story, hold space and tell your story, because there's so many people who need to hear that story, who will relate to that story, who will connect with that story, and they will feel at home with that story because they also have a similar or slightly divergent experience. And yeah, we need to recognize the power in ourselves. And that goes back to the idea of supporting ourselves and supporting people who look like you and people who are giving back and supporting your communities, because our stories are rich. And like the shirts that I created, like we literally create culture. We create everything that's good, everything that's dope, everything that people want to rip off and then appropriate and then make cool later. We create all that stuff as POC. And so let's just keep creating that stuff and own the fact that we create that stuff.
I agree with you. It has so much flavor, and like I remember the first time I went to Lauren's event. We stumbled upon it, and I felt like I was with brothers and sisters. You know, I felt so good. It felt so, I didn't feel awkward. I didn't know anybody there, you know, so I agree with that. And I gotta say, I know sometimes it gets hard, especially when I think about my younger self. I saw someone mentioned non-binary, LGBTQ community, like all these communities that when you are in a place where things get hard because of who you are, when I think about the time that I was a dreamer and I heard no's in corporate or in business, when you are in those weak moments, remember that one day you're gonna look back and the very things that seem to be a disadvantage are actually what make you special. They're actually what make you you, and they're actually what's gonna lead you to your purpose. If I hadn't lived every single thing that I lived, I wouldn't be where I am today. And maybe I would be an average person. I don't know where I would be, but these are the very things that led me to where I am today, and they give me a sense of purpose. And so embrace, to echo what everyone else said, embrace who you are.
Well, I guess I have to fourth that because that's so true. And I, like, to Ramel's point, being Black is so lit. I just couldn't imagine another reality for myself. Like being who you are, and loving that, and loving it so much that you want to share it with other people and create space for other people to feel safe and love that about themselves too. That's valuable. Like that's just valuable. I can't, like, I think sometimes people think like when we do this work, it's like to chase clout or to be like the cool people, or like we have this and I'm an entrepreneur. It's like, yeah, that's like, sure, cool. It looks good on the Instagram, but in real life, it's hard work. And I'm convinced people that do it like us do it because we genuinely love the community so much. I mean, especially in the context of San Diego, like doing what we're doing in San Diego, it's a hard, I'm not even gonna front, it's hard. Before this session, I felt very discouraged, and I had multiple conversations about like, is this for me? Because it's nothing but challenges, and it's not challenges because of my community or the people I serve. It's the challenges are always external, and it always seems to be related to how I show up or how my community shows up, right? Because there are so many lies, just flat out lies that I've been told about what happens when people that look like us walk into a room. And you feel like, wow, am I really gonna be fighting forever for these people? But no, because you're gonna get your own space. You're gonna build your own table, like Jesse said, right? You are going to support people who are building tables, like Erwin said, so that we can collectively have more things. Like, we want more things. We're gonna support each other so that we get them. And then we're gonna have our own spaces to love up on each other, be able to explore the diversity within our own communities. Because of course people think we're just this monolith, like Latinos, like, bro, there are how many countries? Like, how many people fall up under this category that you just think we're all the same? So I would say, yeah, like, it's a beautiful thing to be in a community and in a space with people who see you for you and accept you and just let you chill in it with no expectations. So thank you all for being here. Attendees, if you felt inspired and you will leave this session doing one thing different, feel free to share it in the chat box. Like, what are you going to do to create space or support the spaces and the tables that are being built by people who aren't white? Like, people who aren't white, people who aren't collectively centered every single day, people who aren't able-bodied, people who are trans, people who face other hardships, particularly related to how they choose to show up and live their true selves. What are you going to do to be more loving and supporting of that? So thank everyone for being here. I'm going to sit back and watch the comments roll through, because I want to know that y'all didn't just sit here and listen and it just went out the other ear. I want to see what y'all are going to do. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm so grateful. Ramel, Jesse, Erwin, I'm so grateful. So grateful. Like, y'all don't know, I was struggling. I was struggling. And this inspired me. Like, I was ready to be like, well, San Diego, you've done it.
We all been there. We've been there. You built something amazing, though. You really, really have. And I've seen you grow so much over the years. Because I think you met me when I was losing my space.
I didn't know you were losing it. I was just like, what? This dope space. This is amazing. And I was like, and Ramel's so cool. Like, how is he so cool?
Yeah, I was just fronting. My head was like, oh gosh, we had halfway out the door. So it's super inspiring to see, like, Jessie, you know, running her space now. And then Erwin is making moves, like, to gosh, they just made a great, amazing donation to the museum, which is just like a blessing, like really like table building, like for reals. And it's inspiring. It makes me want to be more active and not plateau in that, but keep excelling up that hill. And maybe there's not a top of that hill. Maybe it's just a continuous climb. But when people touch you in those type of ways, it's inspiring forever. It doesn't stop. It never quits. And so these moments, I really will remember them forever. I'm never not gonna remember driving past the 5 and then finally seeing your spot, Jesse. I was like, oh, there it is. I've been looking. Where's it at? And then you see it. Or to see Lauren down there at the beach, you killed it. I wanted to yell bars. I was filming, and it was so good. I took the camera down. I said, I'm gonna just soak this in. And those type of things last forever, and I savor them.
Thank you, everyone. We got people in here who are people are leaving this space feeling activated. So thank y'all. That's all thank y'all.
Thank you. Seriously, listening to every single one of you, like, there's just like this commonality, I think, that we all share, kind of like what Ramel was saying, and just listening to everyone and being able to feel what you're saying. Thank you for sharing. I'm really honored to be here.
Super easy. You're clearly supposed to be here. Well, everyone, I'm gonna give back your Wednesday nights. Spicy COVID season. Y'all might have some crazy plans, but thank you again. Thank you to everyone who came and listened, and we'll walk away doing something a little bit different. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.